Praise Yah, everybody. Welcome and thank you for being here again for the reading of our Torah reading this week. If you want to take out your Bibles, we're reading Genesis 28:10 to 32:3. And we're going to start reading 31 today and see how far we get. And then praise Yah. When we last read chapter 30, we were seeing what was going on with Jacob and the sheep and a flock that was being separated for his wages. And that's what was taking place. And he became very prosperous because through this, I don't know if it's called wisdom or through Yahweh or through however, Jacob came with this idea that if he's going to let the camels mate in front of the tree with the rods, and if they come out speckled, they become his. And they did. They speckled and spotted offspring. So he comes up with this idea. Now remember, he must have had at least 14 years, maybe a little longer, to monitor the cattle and see what they were doing. I don't know if he just presented this idea out of the blue one day, but it says Yahweh didn't tell him how to do this. He had 14 years to put this into practice and then and see what would happen. So he was pretty confident going into this here. So let's start reading chapter 31. Well, the last verse in chapter 32 says, "And a man increased very much, and many flocks were his, and his slave girls and male slaves and camels and donkeys." And the way he increased most was he had all these children up to this point. To the point he had 11 sons and one daughter. All right, so starting in 31, and he heard the words of, some of Laban, the sons of Laban, saying, "Jacob has taken away all that was to our father, and from that which was our father he has gotten all his wealth." So right away we see the issue. So, instead of them being happy that he was blessed, they looked at it that and that he blessed their father. They looked at it in a negative way. They look at it that he was trying to steal some. It almost seems that they took away. It says Jacob has taken away all that was to our father. He didn't take away anything. They had an agreement, and that was that. But the sons didn't see it that way. Now you got to understand their point. They got a rich father. They're probably going to get some of this inheritance. All of a sudden, this man comes along, gets their sisters, and now he's getting all their father's wealth. Something stirred up with them. And with the enemy in the spiritual warfare, it's not looking good for Jacob. And Jacob knows the idea of his own brother wanted to kill him, and the idea of fleeing when time to flee. And verse 2 says, "And Jacob saw the face of Laban, and behold, it was not towards him as before." So Jacob was between Laban's sons and Laban. Jacob was not very liked. And again, he knew what he did with his brother Esau, and he knew the feeling of being in danger. But then Yahweh intervened and says, "And Yahweh said to Jacob." So Yahweh spoke to Jacob. And we haven't heard this phrase in quite a while, since he was with the ladder all the way in the desert. We saw Leah acknowledging Yahweh, but finally Yahweh speaking to Jacob and said, "Go back to the land of your fathers, to your kindred, and I will be with you." So Yahweh's telling him to leave now. Now, what's quite interesting is, as we're reading here in the previous chapter, We saw here the Leah acknowledging Yahweh, and but we see Jacob in the previous chapter saying, and it happened when Rachel had may Yahweh add to me another son. In verse 25, and it happened when Rachel bore Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away, so I may go to my own place in my own land. So Yahweh didn't tell him yet to go. He did that on his own. And then in verse 3 of this chapter here, Yahweh said to Jacob, go back to the land of your father and your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob wanted to go back before all this recent stuff happened. And then Yahweh confirmed that. And Jacob sent and called for Rachel and for Leah to come to the field to his flocks. And he said to them, I see your father's face, that it is not towards me as before. But Elohim, my father, has been with me. And you know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father has cheated me and has changed my wages 10 times. So 10 times in 14 years, at least 14 years, 10 times. And it says here, and Elohim has not let him do evil to me. So here Jacob is acknowledging Yahweh. That it was only through Yahweh's protection. In verse 8, and if he said this, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flocks shall be your wages, then all the flocks born speckled. And if he said this, the stripes shall be your wages, then all the flocks will have bore striped. And Elohim has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. So here's where we are here. And it happened at that time the flock was in heat. I lifted up my eyes and saw a dream. And behold, the rams leaping of the flock was striped and speckled and spotted. So now we're starting to understand is where Jacob came up with this idea for the flock. It says here, he had a dream. It says, and the messenger of Yahweh spoke to me in a dream, Jacob, and I said, I am here. So again, we see the messenger of Yahweh. And I always say, when we see the words messenger of Yahweh, but it doesn't mention who it was, we often know who that is. And he said, I am here. And he said, lift up your eyes and see all the rams leaping in the flock. They are striped, speckled, and spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. So it's interesting to note that we had the messengers of Yahweh appearing to Abraham. But with Jacob, it was always in a dream, it seemed. I am the El of Bethel, there where you anointed the pillar, where you vowed to me. Now raise up and go out of this land and go back to the land of your kindred. So Yahweh here, it did in fact tell him to go in the last chapter. And he told him about these spotted, speckled lands and everything else. So Yahweh did open the doors for him. And he was explaining this to Rachel and Leah. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there yet to us a portion of inheritance in the house of our father? Are we not counted strangers by him? For he has sold us, and selling, he has sold us for silver. For all the wealth which Elohim has taken from our father, it is for us and for our sons. And now all that which Elohim has said to do, do. So they gave him the confirmation. So it was very interesting. he wasn't asking them. He wasn't asking them for confirmation, but they still gave it to him. And Jacob arose and set his sons and wives on cattle, and he drove all the livestock, and he took all his goods, which he had gotten, livestock of his property, which he had gotten from Padan-aram, to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. So here, 18. They drove all the livestock and he took all the goods. So he certainly wasn't trying to hide, because here he has a lot of livestock. You know, all of them are going to the desert to go back. And he took all his goods, which had gotten, livestock of his property, to come to his father Isaac to the land of Canaan. Let's see here. Something here. So now remember, they didn't have cars in those days, but it's estimated that the journey was about 450 miles. It would take many weeks of walking. 450 miles with all these livestock and children is where they were at, to go back to Isaac. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole the teraphim, which was a household idol, idols which were her father's. And Jacob deceived the heart of Laban the Syrian, for he did not tell him that he was about to flee. And he and all that was to him fled, and he rose up and crossed the river, and set his face to Mount Gilead. And on the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Now, it's very interesting that it was the third day. It's very, very interesting. The third day he was told Jacob had fled. So now Jacob is a three-day head start. But Laban took his brothers with him and pursued him 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in Mount of Gilead. Now, isn't it interesting that they come to Gilead, where he overtook him? And Elohim came to Laban, the Syrian, in a dream of the night. So again, Elohim appeared yet in another dream, now to Laban, and said to him, watch out for yourself that you do not speak with Jacob from good to evil. Elohim spoke to him and warned him. And Laban overtook Jacob, and Jacob had pitched his tent at the mount, and Laban with his brothers had pinched at Mount Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? And you have deceived my heart, and have taken my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you hide so as to flee? And I have deceived me, and have not told me. And I would have sent you away with rejoicing, and with music, with tabret, and with harp. Well, now he's lying. He wouldn't have sent him away. He didn't want to send him away, and he did everything to keep from sending him away. So he already tried to tell him he wanted to leave, and he wouldn't let him leave. So now he said, why have you done this? I would have sent you away. And you have not let me kiss my sons and daughters. Now you have been foolish to do this. And then Laban reminds Jacob, it is in the power of my hand to do to you harm. But the Elohim of your father spoke to me last night, saying, watch out for yourself, that you do not speak with Jacob from good to evil. So this should have gave Jacob some confidence here. The Yahweh's on his side, keeping his vow. And verse 30, and now surely you have gone because you have longed after your father's house. Why have you stolen my gods? And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, lest by force you take your daughters from me. And whomever you find your gods, he shall not live before our brothers here. See for yourself what is with me, and take it to you. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two slave girls, and he did not find. And he went out of Leah's tent and came into Rachel's tent. And Rachel had taken the household idols and put them into a camel's saddle, and she sat on them. And Laban felt around all the tent, but he did not find. And she said to her father, let no anger be in the eyes of my master, for I have not able to rise before your face. For the way of the woman is to me. And he searched for her and did not find the household idols. And Jacob was angry, and he argued with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt around all my articles. What have you found from all the articles of your house? Set it here before me, my brothers and your brothers, and let them decide between the two of us. And now I was with you 20 years, but not 14 years, 20 years. Your ewes and your she-goats have not failed to bear, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. I did not bring to you the mangled, I replaced it. From my hand you extracted it. The stolen, that's stolen by day and that's stolen by night. I was there by the day in the heat, and it consumed me. And the cold of the night, and my sheep fled from my eyes. Now I have been 20 years in your house. I served you 14 years for your two daughters, and 6 years for your flock. And you have changed my wages 10 times. Except the Elohim my father, the Elohim of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been for me, truly now you would have sent me away empty. Elohim has seen my affliction and the toil of my palm, and last night he judged. So Jacob pleaded his case, made his case. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the sons are my sons, and the flocks are my flocks, ye all which you see. It is mine and my daughters. What can I do this to these today, or to their sons whom they have borne? And now come and let us cut a covenant, you and me, and let us be a witness between you and me. And Jacob took a stone and set it up as a memorial. And Jacob said to his brothers, gather stones. And they took stones and they made a memorial pillar. And Laban called it heap of testimonial. And Jacob called it in Hebrew Gilead, which in Hebrew means heap of testimony. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and between me. Today, so he called the name Gilead, heap of testimony. We're up to verse 49 here in chapter 31. Also Mizpath. Mizpath means watchtower. For he said, may Yahweh watch between you and between me, for we are hidden when we are out of sight, each from his neighbor. If you will not afflict my daughters, and if you will not take my wives above my daughters, if you will not take wives above my daughters, no man is with us. Behold, Elohim is a witness between you and me. So again, here's Laban acknowledging Yahweh in this covenant that's being made. And Laban said to Jacob, behold, this heap, and behold the pillar, which I have set between you and me. And the heap is a witness, and the pillar is a testimonial. As for me, I will not pass over this heap to you. And as for you, you will not pass over this heap and this pillar for evil to me. So it's interesting that he says, I will not pass over this heap to you. And you can pass over this heap, but not to do evil to me. For Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Nahor, the Elohim of their father, let judge between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. And Jacob sacrificed on the mountain, sacrificed a sacrifice, and called his brothers to eat bread. And they ate bread and lodged at the mountaintop. And Laban rose up early in the morning and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban went away and returned to his own place. That was the end of chapter 33. And then we're going to continue finishing the Torah because we're going to read the first 3 verses of chapter 32 here as we continue reading. And Jacob went on his way, and the charms of Elohim met him. Very interesting. So as Jacob left, the angels of Yahweh had met him. And when he saw them, Jacob said, this is the camp of Elohim. And he called the name of that place Manaheim, which means 2 camps. So here he was in the middle of the desert with all his family. They're all there with him. He already got Laban behind him and he's moving forward, but he also knew where he was going to. And Isaac, Esau was where he was heading towards. And verse 3 says, and Jacob sent messages before his face to his brother Esau, to the land of Seir, to the field of Edom. Now remember, the last time he saw Esau was when Esau made a vow to kill him once Isaac had passed on. It's the last time, and so we're going to be reading here in the future, in next week's reading, that hopefully he calmed down and when they meet and so on. So Jacob was told by Yahweh not to be scared, but guess what? He was scared about this situation. And we're going to see what's going to happen with that. But that's the Torah reading for this week. Thank you, Father Yahweh, for giving us your holy word and the backstory of all these important facts. And for the faithfulness of Jacob to come to you and for you to come to him in a dream. And may Yahweh, may you speak to us in our dreams. May you come to us and appear to us, before us, whether a dream, a voice, physically, or however it be. May we realize that and may we see that. Hallelujah. Thank you, Father. And thank you, everybody, for being here with me for this reading. And have a blessed day. Yahweh be with you all. Read it again for yourself, the Torah reading this week, to have a great understanding of it. Until then, everybody, Yahweh be with you all, and shalom, shalom.